The obvious answer is that we need to amend federal and state laws that criminalize the possession and use of marijuana by adults. But how does one go about doing so? On this topic, we speak from experience. Having worked for more than 23 years combined at 3 of the nation's most prominent organizations dedicated to reforming marijuana laws, the Marijuana Policy Project, MPP, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, NORML, and Safer Alternative for Enjoyable Recreation, SAFER. Through public education campaigns, state and federal lobbying efforts, and state and local ballot initiative campaigns, these 3 groups have helped to diminish anti-marijuana sentiment in America. However, prior to the establishment of SAFER in 2005, no organization had single-mindedly engaged in the strategy outlined in this text. That is, a high-profile public education campaign focused entirely on the fact that marijuana is objectively safer than alcohol, both for the user and for society. Past efforts to reform marijuana laws in this country have typically made only passing references to the marijuana versus alcohol comparison. Instead, they have emphasized other more conventional arguments, many of which we will discuss in greater detail later in this book. One such contention is that it is a waste of law enforcement resources to arrest and prosecute marijuana users. Although arguments like this are valid, they have so far failed to convince our elected officials, or even a majority of the American public, to legalize, tax, and regulate marijuana. Instead, reformers are all too often confronted by citizens and elected officials echoing one common refrain: why should society legalize another vice? In essence, much of the public and its elected officials, having witnessed firsthand the many problems associated with alcohol, are hesitant to give a green light to another intoxicant, regardless of what its relative harms may be. In the face of this obstacle, many advocates have downplayed discussing the relative harms of the 2 substances. Instead, they have simply argued that marijuana should be treated like alcohol. In other words, it should be sold legally and regulated. Although we agree with this conclusion, the call to treat marijuana like alcohol does little to alter the underlying public perception that marijuana is bad or dangerous, and therefore is no more than another unnecessary vice. Until we force the public to appreciate that the legalization of marijuana would not be adding a vice, but instead would be providing adults with a less harmful recreational alternative, legalization will likely remain, pardon the pun, a pipe dream. Of course, educating the public about the relative harms of cannabis and alcohol will not be accomplished through a top-down government-run advertising campaign. It will require a broad movement of citizens willing to speak honestly and openly about the relative harms and benefits of the 2 substances. We hope this book, which is designed to both educate and inspire, will become an essential part of that movement. Whether you are a cannabis connoisseur seeking to educate friends and family, or someone who has never even seen a marijuana plant outside of a television or movie screen, we are certain that you will benefit from reading the pages that follow. This book is divided into 3 parts. In Part 1, we compare and contrast the social and public health impact of cannabis and alcohol. We examine the popularity of each drug as well as the potential harms each one presents to the user and to society. Part 2 details the various ways our government has attempted to outlaw and demonize marijuana over the past 70-plus years and explains how these policies are driving people to drink. In Part 3, we provide an overview of past attempts to reform America's marijuana laws and propose an alternative, citizen-driven public education campaign based on the message that marijuana is safer than alcohol. Finally, we offer our vision for a future in which cannabis is regulated and controlled like alcohol, with laws limiting pot's sales to licensed establishments and mandating the enforcement of proper age controls. In the latter part of the book, we have also included tips and resources for those of you who want to spread the marijuana is safer than alcohol message among your friends, on your campus, or in your communities. If this book touches you, we hope you will join us in our mission to educate the public and help us bring about an end to marijuana prohibition. Steve Fox, Director of State Campaigns, MPP, Paul Armentano, Deputy Director, NORML, Mason Tavert, Executive Director, SAFER.